It is also time to wear exactly what you want. And that's what our first guest did. She became the first celebrated model to wear hijab, and by doing so, she shattered preconceived notions about women of color, refugees, and the fashion industry. She is a Unicef Ambassador and a fierce advocate for the rights of children. She is changing the idea of what is possible for so many girls and women all over the world. And she is only 22 years old. Please welcome Halima Aden. Oh. I mean, 22, okay. Halima and I have become friends, and it has been such a pleasure, Halima, getting to know you. You were born in Kakuma refugee camp. You lived there until you were 7 years old. What was it like growing up in a refugee camp, and what was the community like?
Tory. Well, hello, everyone.
Yeah, let's start with that, something light.
Yeah. So, story time. We love a good story time.
Yes.
I grew up in Kenya, and actually one of the largest refugee camps in the world. So very far removed from fashion and the runway. But those 7 years, really, I think, for me, it showed me, like, you know, like our families, for example, like they were stripped of everything. My mom, she had a normal life. They are from Somalia, grew up in Kismayo, a port city, and she always explains the story how one day we're all sitting here like this, and a bomb goes off, violence erupts, your country is not the same, everything is demolished within the same week, and now you have to flee for your life. And that's the, you know, predicament a lot of refugees find themselves in. And so for her to leave that world behind, come to Kenya, it was night and day to our childhood, because she came with the lens of an adult, and I grew up in this camp, and so for me it was like nurturing, actually, and a good childhood, despite it being a refugee camp.
How many people were in the camp?
Oh my goodness. When my family was there, it was 65,000 refugees. And today, it's like tripled.
Wow.
So the camp has grown tremendously since my family has left.
And in Swahili, Kakuma means in the middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere.
What did that feel like to move to the United States and to Minnesota? How? No offense.
Guys, when I tell you, okay, first of all, Minnesota. Don't get me started on Minnesota, because we'll be here all day, all night. You know I rep my state. I still live in Minnesota. New York is like, will you move? No.
She has no interest.
I'm good, beloved. I'm gonna stay in Minnesota.
I don't blame you. I love
New York is like the real refugee camp, honest to God.
By the way, I completely agree with that.
No shade, but tremendous shade.
I'm not disagreeing.
But you know, you don't get a say. That's, I think, something a lot of people don't know is like refugees, you don't get a say in where you're relocated. And my family won the $1 billion lottery ticket. You know, we have this board outside of the camp, and it's like, I'm not even kidding, guys, it's like a scene from the Hunger Games where they come and like every so months, like 6 months, they stamp the names of all the refugees and what country accepted them. It's 1%. 1% of refugees get to come to a place like America or England. Majority stay.
That's a small percentage, wow.
It's nothing. It's like, you know, I went back a year and a half ago, and it's still, there's people who are there the day that I was born who will never leave.
So I'm curious about your mom. She's always worn a hijab. It's very important to you. You had it written into the contracts, in all of your modeling contracts, which is you're a pioneer.
No, thank you.
And thank you for doing that. Tell me about that, and how did you approach it?
You know, okay, so I think we need to, okay, I should explain. I got scouted in like, maybe not a so traditional way.
You told me this. You have to tell. How did you get scouted?
I competed for Miss Minnesota USA in 2016. I was like, I've always wanted to do that. I'm like, toddlers, tiaras.
It was the wave.
And of course I get there, nobody's doing the wave. But I competed, and I think honestly, it does not matter what you look like, how you choose to dress, and it was for me a choice to stand on that stage with a woman wearing a two-piece bikini, and I feel more comfortable, confident in a burkini. But why shouldn't we coexist? Why can't we come together as women and still be each other's biggest cheerleaders, despite what we dress like, what we look like?
Of course. With the U.S. travel ban currently in place, many refugees will not have the same opportunities. And what do people need to understand about refugees seeking asylum today?
It's simple. I think when you put politics aside, and actually one of my favorite Unicef quotes is, "A child in need knows no politics." And if you think about it, what's the difference between a child in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, in New York, a child in Uganda, in Tanzania, Somalia? At the end of the day, what do all kids need? They need a safe place to stay, food, clean drinking water. I mean, they need a lot of stuff, but
Yeah.
those are things that they have the right to have,
So what do you say to other refugees? And I'm sure you have friends that are having difficult situations.
I mean, I have an entire family that I've never met. People don't know that about me. I've never publicly shared, but I have a sister that I've never met, because after the war, my family got split up, and I have a whole sibling that I will probably never get to meet because Somalia's on the ban.
Do you know where she is, or?
Oh, thank God for FaceTime. I'd be like,
Okay.
"Sis, goodbye. I'm doing Tory Burch."
Yeah.
Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to call you later. Okay, bye. I'm kidding, but...
No, I think it's like... But so you think you'll never meet her?
Yeah, well, it's, it's dangerous, and like the country, it's so sad, but, I have so much hope, and I know we're gonna get past it, and Somalia is one day gonna be rebuilt because, it is a beautiful country. We have the largest coastline. Somalia was the first country in Africa to have a female pilot. All these incredible stories came from that country. So yes, today it's heartbreaking to see the famine, to see the displacement, to see the hurt and pain and my people, and in the country, but all you could do is have hope and pray that we're raising kids who hopefully will be the future leaders,
Wow, and you went back to do a TED Talk at the camp. What was that like? Was it everything you remembered? And I mean, I saw your TED. You guys should all see her TED Talk. It's really fantastic.
It was incredible, but it was like so. Okay, first of all, a TED Talk is a TED Talk, and they don't tell you, but you have to memorize it word for word, people. and
right, I think yours was 8 minutes.
Yeah, ADD. I was like, we're gonna have to condense, guys. But it was in a refugee camp, so imagine that, you can't talk about refugees without refugees. And I thought it was just genius that TED Talk decided to do it was the first time that they went to a refugee camp, and it took 4 days to bring in everything, all the equipment. They had it so the refugees could, hear the speakers, and for me, it was like probably the best trip of my life because I got to go home. I got to see like the place I grew up in. The kids, they're the happiest.
Did you remember it? I mean, it all came back.
I mean, my school is still there. I was like, okay, it's grown.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about some of the questions this morning, and one of the, I mean, we're experiencing the worst refugee crisis since World War II. And you're a brand ambassador for UNICEF.
Yeah.
How are you using your platform to look at this issue and help start to combat it?
I think by, like even today, sharing my story, it's a room full of, everybody looks like from New York.
No. In fact, very few New Yorkers. Everyone is from all over.
Yeah, from all over the world, literally.
Over.
And then you guys hopefully will spread my story. And if you don't, how many of you have a friend who's a refugee? Well, actually, put your hands down.
A lot.
We're gonna do a little game. Raise your hand if you've ever been a first in anything. First in your family to graduate, first to buy a car, first to rent a home, first to own property. That's me. How many okay, we need to have a question that everybody is gonna raise their hand. What do you think?
Where are you going with this? I'm happy to help.
Okay. It was a fun social experiment, but I guess whatever.
But when you think about that, you were first of a lot, right, in your family, and still. But how are you? Tell me about how, as a UNICEF ambassador, tell me about the work that you do.
Okay, so it's crazy because for me, what was like mind-boggling this year was looking at the numbers and like, okay, every 2 seconds a person is displaced from their home. So that means before I even finished,
wow,
a person is like homeless, and it could be due to famine, due to war, due to so many things. And so I'm like, okay, what can I be doing to share what UNICEF is doing on the ground? They're in over 196 countries and territories. Every year I go on a field visit with them. I'm actually planning my fourth.
Where are you going? What's your next trip?
Where do you suggest?
I don't know. Where have you been with them?
Mexico, I've been to Kenya, I've been to Italy. So I'm still like figuring out where I want to go next, but.
I mean, I was in Myanmar, which was actually, I'm not sure how that's now. There's so many places that it's endless, but I think it's great. I mean, I was thinking about you also, and the fact that you are just breaking stereotype after stereotype through the work, being a model, through your advocate for refugees. But things get tough, and what helps you keep going when things are hard? How do you motivate yourself, and where did that grit come from? You must have a strong mother.
Well, like you said, I almost got tearful over there when I was like hearing you talk about your mom, because I so resonate with that, and I feel like if you have that presence of a strong woman in your life, whether it's a mom, a grandma, an aunt, a sister, it changes your life, it impacts your life, and for me, it's just given me the confidence to walk into rooms and not be afraid to be the first. And I think for women, there's like that pressure to be small, to not follow or pursue your dreams, but we don't tell our sons the same things. Like we tell our boys, you can be anything you want. You could be a doctor, a CEO, you could be an NFL player, even though you can't do a push-up. Like all these things, we hype them up, and we need to hype our daughters up. Like, yes, you could be Beyonce, you could be the CEO, you could be a Tory Burch, having her foundation.
Maybe one day. I feel like I was lucky because my mother was that mother who, regardless of whether she actually thought so or not, had me believing I could do anything as long as I worked very hard to achieve that. Another thing, when you sign these contracts with your hijab, and she's one of the most important models today in fashion. Tell me about how did they perceive that? Because I always love your creativity and how beautiful you wear your hijab as well.
Thank you.
But you are dead set on never changing that. And that's very impressive.
Boundaries, okay? Boundaries and also standards. I was coming 19 years old, straight out of high school. I flew in. It was my first time. I competed in the pageant Saturday, Sunday. And no kidding, guys, that following Monday, my life just changed. Fenty, like Rihanna called, and I was like, oh my God.
I guess I understand why.
I was like, can I talk about this? And of course, you can't talk about campaigns until like 6 months. I'm like, did I make the cut? Did I not?
The client.
But I was like, in my little group chat.
Talk to us about British Vogue.
102-year history. They've never had a hijab-wearing model. So to be that person was like, But here's the thing, right? Because a lot of you guys look so young, and here's the thing.
Not everyone, no.
Well, I see your husband is right there.
That's why I'm kidding.
Everybody is under 25, okay? Including us.
Yeah, of course.
But so, it's okay to say no, and it's okay to walk away, and it's okay to do things a little differently. Like, I walked into that meeting, and I talked to my mom right before I went into IMG's offices, and I was so excited. What's a hijab-wearing model? At the time, that didn't exist, so I was like, okay, let me do my research. Like, what is this gonna look like? And it is a little bit more complicated because, backstage dressing space, a man can't dress me. That doesn't make sense. So all these little stuff that are very easy to work, but it requires to talk about. So in that meeting, it was 4 hours, and I was like, I don't want to move to New York. Imagine the shock. I'm going to stay in Minnesota. They're like, ma'am, there are 0 jobs in Minnesota. And fair, I still have yet to do anything in Minnesota, so.
Be it first.
Well, I want to be on their tourism board. Somebody call them. I don't know why I didn't get the invite.
We can shoot in Minnesota. I'm open to that. And then I was just thinking also when you just talked about bikini versus, tell me about that. And when you're on a beach, do you ever feel discriminated?
I don't know how to swim.
No, but you're still wearing something very different than what other people are wearing, right? And so do people feel comfortable around that? Is that something that you feel? Yeah.
It's like, okay, because you guys know, like, we're living in an interesting time because there's some countries that have banned the burkini, and the burkini is literally just a more modest cover-up swimsuit.
And what countries are those?
France. Shout out to Paris. I'm kidding.
Okay, she's come down on New York and Paris. Where else?
Oh my God, after this, I'm never gonna be booked. Okay, we need to hit Milan. Okay, we have to say something about Milan and London. Make it official.
I wasn't gonna mention the coronavirus, so we're... Go ahead. So where else has banned it?
France, and like public beaches, public swimming pools. And I think it's just so sad if like, it's just another swimsuit. And I think as women, why doesn't, we have so many other problems.
So is that on your agenda to change? That would be a good one.
That and learning how to swim, believe it or not.
But
I just
to work with the
people,
French government.
Yeah, let people wear whatever they want to make them feel comfortable.
Of course they should, and I think it's beautiful. You are, and we were just talking about it, working on a movie.
I am.
So, and you're I said, are you in it? Are you producing it? Are you
I know. If it was up to me, I would have been starring in it, co-starring in it, doing the music for it.
So can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so it's called I Am You, and I worked with Sanya Nasri Cole on it, and she's a woman filmmaker. So talk about how rare that is in her industry. So she went to all 5 countries.
It's getting more and more, thankfully.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
But we still have to like break that glass ceiling.
Yes. And so tell us about it.
So it's about this journey of 5 refugees, and it like just follows them from Afghanistan, and you see what brought their family, because that's like the biggest misconception is refugees are coming here for a better job, for a better opportunity, to be close with friends, and that's not the case. For a lot of the refugees, it's a matter of life or death. And if you think about it, no mom or dad, like think of how much you love your sons, like you would never put them on a boat and risk their lives. She looks at you and she's like, do I? How much? But you know, like you wouldn't risk his life if it wasn't a matter of life or death. So it just gives you the chance to be empathetic. And I think, you know, if there's anything that you could do for refugees, just have an open heart and have empathy. That costs you $0.
Yeah.
You have the best crowd.
We have the best crowd, and I have to say, a lot of people in the audience wrote essays about why they wanted to be here, and we're going to hear some of the speakers from the audience.
Yeah,
some of their
my
stories.
Best friend is here, Sakina, and she's going to be speaking later.
So I can't wait to hear some of those stories. But you know, with this summit, I like action. What can you tell all of us to help with this situation? How can we start to really think of refugees differently and different people differently and embrace them rather than...
Yeah, I think it's simple things, you know, having an ear, listening, you know, sometimes it's just a matter of like sitting across the table from somebody, tell me about your life, like what brought you, and that's why I love coming to your dinner so much, because I feel like I learned so much that I can apply into my life, into my everyday, just from that time that you spent having an intimate conversation. So get to know your neighbors, get to know, and that's the other thing too, it's like once you learn why people are refugees, you start to see that it impacts your life, you know? And so just being more educated, doing your research, supporting organizations like Tory Burch Foundation or Unicef, there's so many things, big or small, that we could all be doing.
Oh, you're amazing, Halima. And just one more. What's next for you?
What's next? We're going to the Met Ball.
That was hysterical. Why don't you tell them? You have to tell them how that happened.
Tori's like, I didn't know that.
That was so funny.
Wait. It's a funny story.
Yeah, tell them. You have to. No, go.
Okay, you tell them.
No.
No. I need to hear her say. It needs to come from her mouth.
No, I was laughing so hard because we spoke on a panel together and for Glamour magazine, and when someone, Samantha in the room, the editor of Glamour, brought up the Met, and I said, of course, I have never in my life seen a reaction like Halima. Look at her. I mean, how could I not invite her to the Met?
I straight up was like, be ambitious. See, ladies, if you don't ask, you don't get. So